What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Rideshare Rodeo, Uber, Lyft driver, and gig economy news. Sponsored by Curry.com. I'm your host, SJ. Let's get it on.
Well, midnight headlight, blinding on a rainy night, steep grade up ahead, slow me down and making no time. I gotta keep it rolling. Those are windshield wipers slapping out the tempo, break the perfect rhythm with the song on the radio. I gotta keep it rolling. I'm driving my life away.
Welcome to the Rideshare Rodeo bonus episode. So this was going to be the last one since last week, or next Friday, October 1st, the TNCradio.live is beginning the rideshare program that I will be hosting, along with three other people, Jason Thierry being one of them, from the Gig Economy podcast. And we are going to be welcoming all of you to call in. It's going to be a call-in show, and there will be 800 numbers. You can do it through the internet, all kinds of things, and you can just chat in our room. We'll have 4 people working it, or you can request to come on the line and just talk with us. Shop talk, questions, anything you got. This week, I recorded a piece with Mr. Flex, from YouTube, who live broadcasts all of his day every day while he's out working the Doordash platform. I am going to, even though next week we start the podcast or the live radio that I've been doing these bonus podcasts until we started that. So it is next week, but I'm thinking about dropping one more bonus episode next Friday that would drop at like midnight. As soon as it turns to Friday on October 1st, one last one, because I wanted to do a piece, or I was going to do the piece with Mr. Flex, but I think that's going to tie in with something I did today. Today, Friday, September 24th, I did my first Curry route ride along. So I was in the truck for 7 hours and learned a lot about the routes. So, I want to thank Curry for the sponsorship. I want to thank them for the opportunity. And I want to thank Nathan, the Curry route driver who I spent the day with today, who was, very informative. Him and I really kind of brainstormed a lot of stuff and gave me some good ideas. And so, I'm communicating with Curry, and I'll be passing along a lot of information. For the route driving, it was really so much better than so many gigs, even rideshare, which is my primary focus, and I know a lot of people are loving on the delivery and all that, but I gotta say, this was pretty cool if you're into a route. Now, a route is, that's a daily thing. You're still an independent contractor, but you get paid out every day. You get paid well, and the overtime, you get paid really well. But because I did that, next Friday, I'm going to be doing my own route without somebody else in the car with me. And I'm going to run all kinds of cameras, and we're going to get some video for Curry and stuff. But I'm going to take you through the day of me. And I'm thinking about adding that and the Felix piece I did into next week's final bonus podcast that will come out at midnight. And then that evening, I will be doing the live radio show. So this was going to be the last week, but the other thing is on Wednesday, October 6th, I have Veena Dubal on the podcast, and I really want to get prepped for this. So I thought I would replay this week in the bonus podcast right now, the interview that Ron, EntreCourier, did with me on his program. So I talked to Ron. He's fine with this. I know some people heard it. I know, quite a few of my listeners did not. I turned a lot of people onto it. It was a 3-4 weeks back, maybe, that we did it. And Ron also lives in Denver, EntreCourier. And so him and I got together the day before at a coffee shop, had never met in person. We'd done podcasts together. We've chatted on the phone, all this, that, and the other, but we had never met in person. We met in person and, totally clicked like we knew we would, and hung out for like 3 hours just chatting about everything and everything. But the following day, we got together and did a piece on the ProAct and everything going on. And I thought this would be a good week to play that, because I am recording with Veena on the 6th of October, but it will be on the Monday or on Tuesday, the 12th. I hope I got that date right, of October will be when that podcast drops. So even though we're recording the Wednesday before, it won't drop for another 4 or 5 days. But it's going to be a really interesting conversation. But I thought I might play the piece that Ron and I did first now, 2 weeks ahead of time. Let that settle out there. And then next week, I have our normal drop on Tuesday. We have Red Conrad from Florida, who basically took gig and turned it into his own business, all of his gigs, which is exactly what we always talk about and that you should do. Treat this as your business, because it is your business. So, so I'm excited to have him on too. And we're going to talk about that next week, along with a few other things. And then I'll play the Felix and some Curry, me on the road piece next Friday as one last additional bonus. Maybe I'll put it out Thursday. I know I'm not doing the ride till Friday. I'll have to think about this. But I really thought it was important that I played this Ron piece, because in 2 weeks from this coming Monday, will be the episode with Veena Dubal. So basically 17 days from now is when you'll hear the Veena Dubal piece on Rideshare Rodeo. And so I wanted to play what Ron and I did. So I'm going to do that now, and I'll come back on the other side.
Well, hey, folks, I want to welcome Steve Johnson, and I want to thank Steve for joining us. Now, Steve operates the Uber Lyft drivers website, and he has the Rideshare Rodeo podcast. And Steve's also been involved with Para for quite a while, kind of way back from the beginning. And that's actually how Steve and I think, were first introduced to each other, was the guys that Para kind of connected us. And so glad to have him on as a guest on the podcast here today. And Steve, kind of tell us a little bit more about, maybe just let us know a little bit about, you're in the gig economy. You started out in rideshare. Tell us a little bit how you got into that, and your role with Para, and maybe kind of introduce yourself that way.
Will do. Thanks for having me, Ron.
You bet.
So I got into rideshare in 2014 here in Denver. By the way, Ron and I actually live in the same city. So
yeah,
if you listen to my podcast or Ron's or whatever, and you did put it together, we both live in Denver. But so I got into it in 2014 with Lyft. Started doing it pretty heavily. I was making great money. That's when it was still the percentage split. My original percentage split with Lyft was 90-10, 90 to me. A year, about maybe 10 months, 12 months later, I signed up for Uber too, even though I was jamming with Lyft. And I got an 85-15 split, again, on that platform, killing it. So both platforms were just killing it for me. It could be a Tuesday night. I mean, no matter when you worked, you made a ton of money. They were still trying to populate drivers into this market, overpopulate, I should say.
Sure.
They were underpopulated and they were trying to overpopulate, because as we all know, rideshare would fail immediately if the supply couldn't meet the demand,
right?
Which I won't get into, but this is something that's going on right now temporarily. But, and so, I did rideshare. I've done close to 30,000 rides between the two platforms. And in 4.5 years ago, so March of 2017, Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
Yeah. Of 2017. I feel like it's 2016 though. And it was our 4-year anniversary this March. Maybe regardless. I started uberlyftdrivers.com, and we now have like 2,900 articles posted on there, both re-agitated ones and ones that we've done ourselves. And I started it because of everything that was going on with Travis, oddly. I didn't know where it would be going. I didn't really have a plan for it. But Travis was just causing more chaos than he had been even the whole year, that whole last year. You know, he was running around the world, and we were hearing about him like he was Hugh Hefner, kind of. You know, like this guy is just getting kicked out of countries and, you know, prostitutes and sushi bars and who knows. And so he was kind of just a trip to follow. So, you know, I kind of felt like this can't keep going on like this. It was getting real bad. And I remember it was, you know, in like February when I thought about it. And then in March, I did the first piece, which was the very first article posted is the video of him and the confrontation with the driver. Have you seen that before?
Yeah.
From back in the day, where the driver tells him how he bought the car and how he now can't make the money and he's drunk and he's swearing at him and all that. So that was the first post. If you go back, you'll see it. I've had to replace the video in that post, by the way, like 7 times because they keep ripping it down on YouTube.
Oh.
But after that, I wrote, you know, right, like the next day was the Susan Fowler incident. So right away, I did a piece on that. And I was just kind of doing news. And then when they actually kicked him out right after his mom died, I mean, everything was going crazy for this guy. And then they kicked him out, and Derek Kay came in, and I just kept doing it because everything was so interesting. You know, Phantom was still going on. People were still using that Phantom problem, which you can find on our website if you want. If you're interested in it, I won't get into it, but you can go to uberlyftdrivers.com, search Phantom. And you'll see that PHAM, whatever, Phantom, but it's PH. But you'll see what it was. It was a trick to evade police that they were using. And some other stuff. So it kept getting more and more interesting. And so anyway, I did that for a long time, kept driving. And when the pandemic hit, I had thought about, you know, doing a podcast, but then I did the podcast to help people who it started as I had an idea to do it before the pandemic, but what it ended up being was it took the pandemic to start it. And I did this helping with PUA for about the first 6-7 episodes. And oddly enough, I got contacted by a CBS News reporter through a reporter I know at the Denver Post. And she was doing a piece on what I was doing for free because I had done a lot of the states. So, and I kept diving into more about how gig workers are going to get this right as the CARE Act passed. And when the article posted, it was me. It was 2 people quoted in it, me and David Pickerel.
Okay.
So immediately I look at this other guy, and his quote was like stuff I had said to her too. And I'm like, wow, we're super aligned here. And so I was like, I'm going to reach out to him. And I can't remember if it was him or me first. It might have actually even been him. That like right as I was thinking I'm going to reach out to him, like the next day he contacted me through Twitter. And because he got the handle from the article. Mm-hmm. And he contacted me, and he's like, we're both doing the same thing. And I'm doing this thing with the technology Airtable. And I said, okay, well, then let's do it together. And that was also the forming of David and I, which was April 2020. And that's when he was autonomy.jobs. And we were together helping gig workers figure out how to navigate PUA in the beginning when everybody needed it.
Yeah.
You know, we stopped when it became like maybe people were abusing it or whatnot. Obviously, we just helped jumpstart it because you remember in the beginning, everybody was at home. We were all stuck at home.
Yep.
They made it very hard to get the PUA, and a lot of people really, really needed it. So it wasn't like we were trying to abuse the system. We were trying to just help the drivers. Yeah. And then we tried to help them with data through autonomy, getting their data like the UK gets, and then every project since. And we probably, between David and I, we probably had 200 ideas that haven't happened yet. So that's me in a nutshell. I
start throwing out ideas, say, hey, you know, what about if you did this or something like that? And they throw out stuff, and it's just like, it's so easy to spend forever just talking about.
But I mean, like, you know, the last thing I will say is that the podcast is like completely evolved since then. Like what I wanted it to be before I started it, what I started it as, and what it went through some morphing periods and different things and changes it to what it is now. And I kind of feel like it's in a pattern that I like.
Yeah.
I like the flow.
Yeah. Yeah. I know there's kind of been a progression, I think, in our last couple of episodes that makes you a really good guest on here, because when I took a few months off or something like that, started season 2, and I started right away with David was actually a guest. David Pickerel, if you don't know who we're talking about, is the CEO of Para. And Para's made a lot of news because of the way that they were able to reveal the actual pay amount on DoorDash deliveries and things like that. It'd be real easy to go down that rabbit hole. But, David talked about some of the things that, DoorDash had done and trying to change their ability to help drivers out. And then the last episode got talking about the strike, the DoorDash strike that a lot of drivers were doing. And a lot of that was, it was fueled by anger over DoorDash hiding the tips, about DoorDash reducing pay. And I think there was even some anger over DoorDash changing the algorithm in a way that blocked Para from being able to help drivers out. There was a lot of anger about that out there. Still is. And it just seems to be getting worse. But, the one thing so it was just kind of like there's all of this dissatisfaction with DoorDash, with gig economy companies all around together. And then as people were talking about going on strike, and the one problem with the strike is we're not employees.
Exactly.
But that kind of brings us into this week's topic and what I wanted to talk about, because you've had a lot of people on, talking about this, and it is this whole thing about, should we be employees? Should we be, independent contractors? And then national legislation that is out there that's trying to force companies to hire us as employees instead of independent contractors. And what does that all mean to us? And so wanted to talk about ProAct, and you've had a number of people on about that. So kind of, you've had quite a variety of guests and some different things like that. So maybe you can kind of take it from here and talk about some of the things that you have talked about, both pro and con.
Yeah. So, exactly right. I've had, and oddly, I try and do this often, but it's really hard to find people on both sides of an issue and you probably know this, Ron, very well. Like, it's hard to have people on both sides of the issue on your podcast, because sometimes how you feel, and I try and be very middle of the road, even if I lean one way or the other. Obviously, that's kind of my position to do that. But I also need other people to be respectful. And by that, I mean, like, not get heated, not start like saying how it's bad about the other side. Instead, like a debate, like a non-Trump debate, be respectful of the other person, I'm just saying that, like, there are a lot of people I've wanted to have on. I get on a phone call with them. I'm like, there's no way I can have them on the podcast. So, but I have, luckily, with the ProAct, been able to find a couple people who, in the old school sense of independent contractors, app based on demand services, who have been just tragically destroyed by AB5. And both of them have an understanding. One of them has a very good understanding, and Ron knows which one I'm talking about. That's Lisa Rothstein, who was on a podcast of ours that you can find. And then the other one is Gail Gordon. And they both just got destroyed. One of them is a freelancer in a bunch of different ways, 6-figure earner. And she has not been able to make a dime since AB5 in California. And she's a big proponent against no AB5 and no ProAct. Gail Gordon had her opera house shut down, and it's a nonprofit opera house that has a very unique niche. And for that reason alone, they're like, there isn't another one in the country that does what she does. And she's out of business. She had been open for 25 years. She's done. She's closed. And she tried to stand up for the fight too. She didn't just shut the doors the first day, and they live down in LA County. So they, her and her wife, I've talked to her, or her and her husband have a good house and a good living, and probably enough that she could retire. She didn't want to, though.
Right.
She wanted to keep doing these plays or these operas. And so it was impossible. I have had also Willie Solis on 3 times. And he's a controversial one for when I have him on, because people who listen to the podcast regularly are like, why keep having Willie on? And Willie and I have a good back and forth. and a very good respect for each other. Even if like in one conversation, we don't agree on anything, we have a good, and that usually doesn't happen. It's actually usually really good conversations where both of us see a little bit of what the other's saying. We never change our stance, but we and we always talk about that, even so that the audience hears it, that this is what needs to happen, not the shouting. Do you see how we're talking? And even though our views aren't changing, we're more accepting of the other side and try and be more empathetic to what they're going through, or what they're feeling on this. Yeah. Because as hard as you feel on something, somebody else feels different about it. So I've had the pleasure of having both sides. Me personally, I am apt. If I lived in California, I would be livid about AB5 and its timing with the pandemic and everything, and just unreal how all that went down, and that the Governor Newsom didn't repeal it, something he could have done maybe before all the people started calling for his removal. The people who started the removal of him act, or the push, are the same people who were like, get rid of this thing, we're out of work.
Yep.
So anyway, I sit on the side of no AB5 and absolutely no ProAct. I know a lot of the people in the non-app gig-based on-demand world, like those of us on all these gig platforms, were under Prop22, but the ProAct, at least from the old school independent contractors outside of the app-based, their big push is that the ABC test is taken out of the ProAct. And I've even had it said to me from people who have a good understanding that as long as the ABC part's out, we don't even care if it goes through, because that ABC part being removed allows the decision. And then the one question I did have for somebody is, in the right to work states, though, does that allow them that? And yes, it would, because in those cases, it would allow the state to decide how it's worked. And like Ron, you and I have talked about, or, just recently talked about, was, how like in those right to work states, what happens if you vote that you don't want a union, but 50.1% vote that they do? Mm-hmm. And we were talking about how, yes, you'll be forced into the union, but not only that, they actually share your information with these union members, your name, your address. Now they can come to your home. And it's just, I don't know. To me, it's one of those things where, you read the whole ProAct, and then there's like 4-line paragraph about the ABC test. And that's the most important part of it. Mm-hmm. To both ICs, both gig-based and non-gig based.
Right.
Just, it's like, keep the IRS test, dump the ABC test.
Yeah. And, and probably one thing we should do before we go too much further into this, and it's this, maybe defining what the ProAct is, for folks that maybe don't understand that, or maybe haven't figured or heard much about or paid attention to AB5 in California. You start off with, and it comes back to this difference between employee and independent contractor. Doordash, Grubhub, Uber Eats, Uber, Lyft, all these companies bring us on as independent contractors. And when we talked last week about the strike, the problem is we're not employees, and we're contracted to be doing this work as businesses. And that makes it a little hard to do. The problem that some folks see with that is, okay, there's no guarantees. When we're contractors, there's no minimum wage. You can't force DoorDash to say, okay, you're going to make this much money. You just can't do it. It's just, and I think they can a lot of people feel exploited by that. And I think they do my feeling is, I do think that they do exploit that designation. But the response then is, it started in California, and actually ABC test has been around for a while. Since they created this, decision, we're going to create a more rigid law around when you can use contractors, and they use this ABC test. And it's a 3-part test that determines whether or not, if you meet any one of those 3 parts or something like that, then you can't. If you meet any one of those 3 parts of that test, you have to be hired as an employee. So tell us a little bit about what that is all about and how they determine that.
Right. So I'm actually looking for, so I can provide it right, the ABC test here right now. Because so I can read the three parts.
Sure.
Because it's the B prong that you can't pass.
Yeah.
The A and the C prong are passable. And folks, remember that when we're talking about this portion too, like I said, IRS test, not ABC. And Ron said, yeah, basically for, forever, since there's been independent contractors and knowledge of them with the IRS, there has been an IRS test that absolutely works in determining whether you're an IC or not.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not one of those dated things or, whatever that needs to be changed. It actually still applies. It still works. So here's the ABC test though. I'm going to tell you each of the three prongs, A, B, C. So, 1, the individual is free from control and direction in connection with the performance of the service, both under his contract for the performance of service and in fact. That one's passable. 2, the service is performed outside the usual course of business of the employer.
And that's
that
why
is not passable.
That's why DoorDash will tell you that they are not a delivery company,
right?
Because they're trying to pass that.
Right, because they're trying to call themselves SaaS, software as a service.
Yep.
So, and then 3 is the individual is customarily engaged in an independently established trade, occupation, profession, or business of the same nature as that involved in the service performed.
Yeah.
So not only is A and C passable, oddly C almost conflicts B, and it's like, what? By making C, why is B there? C saying that you are doing a specific service, profession, or business of the same nature as that involved in the services performed. Okay, well then there would be no way for anybody to pass B, people hiring or people looking for work.
Yeah. And the thing is like it's if you meet any one of those 3, then the company cannot hire you as an independent contractor. They've got to hire us as employees.
Correct.
What happens if that happens?
Well,
if we're forced to be employees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we have 85% of the drivers in this country don't want that.
Right.
So, I mean, first of all, you're going to only have the 15%. And I mean, I got to say this, how many of those 15% are full-time? I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Because if many of them are just part-time, like so many on the platforms, then there's going to be a huge issue with supply. There will be a big issue with cost to customer. You will lose flexibility. Absolutely. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be so point of fact on a somewhat unknown, but people, I will tell you for certain, I've talked to a lot of people, I will tell you for certain that if you think at all that there's an employee model that has flex hours, you tell me one job in this world that allows that, you to work when you want.
Exactly. Yeah, I think you're right.
It doesn't exist.
And that's just it. It is, and it boils down to control, whether or not you've got the freedom to operate as you see fit. And that's ultimately what the existing IRS rules say. It really comes down to it has to do with control. And there are 3 tests that they've got, and they're all different levels of control. There's behavioral control, there's financial control, and then there's the type of relationship. And all 3 things are about them controlling you. And, if they're not controlling you, then you're not an employee. Mm-hmm. That's what this whole thing is really all about in the first place, I think, is control. It's about power. It's about control. It's about who gets to be in charge of stuff.
A lot of the thing too, I got to say is, it always baffles me, the people who just are on like these social media sites, like you've seen, Ron, too, where they're just bashing Uber for not living up to AB5. And yet these people work the platform. So you hate this company, but you want to be an employee for them?
And when you get into that discussion with them, I just got into a discussion with somebody here just in the last day that it was, they were all about, well, we need to form a union. And it's like, you can't form a union. You're not employees. Well, yeah, but they're screwing us over. And it's like, well, then become an employee. Well, I don't want to be an employee. Folks, you can't have both.
Right.
If you want the freedom that goes with running a business, then run a business. And if you want the guarantees, then be an employee. But I think that's part of the question that's out there, is whether or not these companies should be allowed to bring us on as a contractor as opposed to as an employee. There was a guy that I met that I can't remember which platform it was. It was kind of one of these intermediate platforms, one of these little guys that was out there. And he was actually an employee for them. So basically his job was to take, it was more like a product delivery type of thing, but his job was kind of to take those deliveries that they couldn't get anybody else to take. So they could control him. They could tell him where to go and things like that. So they had kind of a hybrid type of thing where most of their people were independent contractors, but then they had employees to kind of pick up the stuff in between. And maybe that's one way to do things, but to force it to be all or nothing, I don't know.
And that's why people are saying remove. If so, a lot of the people I've talked to, when I asked them, what, in the beginning, when I was asking, what do you mean IRS, not ABC? And they explained and showed me the difference way back when I was looking into this. One of the things that they're just fine with is if there can be a way that everybody gets to decide, do you want to be in these unions? Be at their mercy, be an employee, have to strike if you have to, get a floor payment, which will also be your ceiling payment, by the way, folks, because they'll have to move to a franchise model or something of that nature. And at that time, you're going to have a boss. He's only going to hire a certain amount that meets his demand.
Yeah.
He's only going to put enough supply into the demand. So almost like Ron, you and I were talking about the service industry and bartending and stuff, almost like that. Like you might have to call in. Like when I was a bartender, on certain nights, we had to call in and see if I was going to be needed. And a lot of times my boss, I'd be scheduled for 8. I'd call in at 7. He'd say, call back at 9. I don't know yet. Call back at 9. He'd be like, I don't think I'm going to need you tonight. So now my night shot and I didn't even get to work.
Yeah.
So you're going to be seeing things like, if you want to get minimum wage and health benefits, you're going to see things like this. Trust me. You're not going to be able to pick your hours. You're not even going to be able to pick where you work. And by the way, you're one nice thing for anybody that wants it, though, I will say, you're going to have 100% acceptance rate.
Yep. Because you don't have
because the first time you miss one, you're fired.
Yep. Yeah. And that's the thing, I don't think a lot of people realize what they're asking for if they want to be employees. You got a delivery going to a bad part of town. Too bad. You got to take it.
Mm-hmm.
And
they might not even provide you any information. Like at the end of the night, you might find out all your tips, whatever. You're not going to see money anymore. You're just going to see, go here, do this, do this. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a job, people. You're not going to be your boss.
What about the people that say on the other side that there's no reason that an employer could not be flexible?
There's not. There's absolutely not. They absolutely could. They could do both. They could do employees and flex, but I still put the gauntlet down. Show me that company. And if, like Ron was talking about, there was one, but I'm just saying in the really big picture of the world, show me the company that allows allows some people to have the employee status and others to have, they can just, be independent contractors, but now they can turn on and work whenever they want. Mm-hmm. Again, folks, if you're going to have in this scenario, if you're going to have the employee status, and whether it's through Uber, Lyft, or whether it's through a franchise, they're not going to allow independent contractors too, because they're already going to have the employees modeled out for the region that they cover, how many they need, and they're going to schedule accordingly. They're not going to say, by the way, you other 100 people, you can just sign on.
Yeah, because why are they going to then give a group of people the chance to turn down offers or cherry pick
right?
Or anything like that?
And remember this part too. Obviously, they're not, because if the whole insurance thing starts to turn over on them. Mm-hmm. So now it's not how Uber and Lyft work with insurance. It's now going to be that they would have to, even if you're ICing, they would have to pay your insurance.
Yeah.
Or have you under their insurance. And you're not an employee. Guess what, guys? Again, I hate to just be a realist, but that's not going to happen.
Well, and I think here's the thing that I think about when I hear those arguments that are things like, well, there's nothing that stops them from being flexible and all of that. But it's like, okay, here's the one side where, you're campaigning on how terrible these companies are, right? That they're exploiting you, that they're scum. And I think there's plenty of reason to say any of them are scum, but it's like all of a sudden, that these gig companies, you bring out all the evilness of the gig companies, but then all of a sudden it's like, you're going to change the law and they're going to flip a switch. And now all of a sudden, are these guys going to become model citizens? They're going to give you all the hours you ever wanted, all the free time, the overtime that you ever wanted, if you wanted to do more than 40 hours, and they're going to give you all the flexibility you ever wanted. How is an evil giant going to all of a sudden become the best employer ever just because you changed the law?
No. And in fact, I would think that this evil giant will get much eviler. It's like you're poking him with a stick over and over till he has to actually get his lazy butt up and go, okay, enough. So I can guarantee, I just can guarantee, I really feel like I can, that no matter what, the outcome of this would not be good. There may be a few handful of people that would like it, but I even think the system would be so disrupted that it would take maybe a few years even for it to go through all these changes it'll go through on how it works. And in the end, it'll end up at a place way worse than what you guys are complaining, or what anybody on that side is complaining about now.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the end, it might begin as something decent, but I don't even think so. I think it would start off even bad, but I think it would evolve into a worse thing, just like how rates have dropped, but at least you can see the rates, know what you can make. And again, I can't stress it enough. All the people I know who have been doing this forever all do it for the flexibility, obviously for the money. But it's not like this is I don't mind the work either, but it's not like this is we're all fighting for this job. It's that this can work in any setting for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of it, because it's like, it is I call it a gateway drug, in that it's an opportunity to get into business for yourself without all of the things that you usually have to do to get into business. And so you get a chance to operate your own business. It's a taste of that freedom, but it is something that you could do it full time if you wanted to make it full time, or it could be the thing that you do during lunch hour or when you get home at the end of the day, because you just need to make some extra money to make ends meet, or to pay the bills, or save up for something. And there's that, that freedom and the flexibility. And I think it was a lifesaver during the pandemic that people could just go out and make money and not go through all the rigmarole that goes with employment. And you're going to take all of that away. And
the bottom line is no matter where you live in the United States, it might not be as much as some cities, but right now, I don't know anywhere in the United States that you can live and not walk out your door and go find a job today, that it probably starts today. So if what you're looking for is minimum wage, maybe a little more than a minimum wage even, and health benefits, I almost put the challenge to you. Go out for a day and look for a job, and I bet you have one by the end of the day.
Yeah.
So why throw a grenade into what 85% of us enjoy?
No, I agree. And here's the thing I think that I look at is that when you take seriously this idea that you're running a business, that's the agreement that you signed. You said that you said, I agree that I'm an independent contractor. I agree that I'm contracting with you as a business and not as an employee. Well, when you're doing that, that makes DoorDash or Uber or Instacart or any of those companies, that actually makes them your customer. And here's the reality is, when you're running any kind of business, is your customer is going to try and screw you. They are going to take advantage of you. And I think DoorDash is the epitome of that type of customer. DoorDash is probably the customer that would shoplift from your store,
He's the one coming in the restaurant to put a finger in the hamburger.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is when you're running a business, and that's the reality, that you're going to have customers that are going to try and get away with crap. But you work around that, and you still make your business profitable, and and you deal with that.
Right.
But do you want to turn that worst customer into your boss?
Well put. I don't.
Yeah,
So-
exactly. It's like, okay, I can deal with DoorDash as my customer, no matter how crappy they get. And if at some point it gets to be too bad, then it's like, okay, I'm done with DoorDash for a while. I did that with Uber Eats for the longest time because I didn't know where it was going, anything like that. And it's like, okay, I'm done with you guys for a while until you make it better. They made it better. And now I think I do more Uber Eats than anybody else, but that's the freedom that we've got with that. But it's like, if I don't trust them as a customer, I certainly don't trust them to be my employer or my boss.
Yeah, I also, I'd say that look at this too. I've been doing rideshare long enough where I know, if you go back even 3 years, if you go back to when I started in 2014 for sure, but if you go even back 3-4 years, there wasn't one person complaining about we need to be employees because we were making a lot more.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And that kind of, in 2014, it was amazing. Like you didn't even care where the money was coming from. You just go work for a while and get a ton of money. And then by 2017, it had gone down a bit and the ways were changing, but there was the surge coming on and it was the multiplier in the beginning. Then it went to flat, then surge and all these changes. So they're ever evolving the platform. And I'm not defending Uber here.
No,
at all, or Lyft. With the algorithms they use and some of the things that Ron and I probably don't want to even get sidetracked here on are disgusting and wrong. However, they do tell you what you will earn per mile. They do tell you what you will earn per minute. So that's up to you because it really then has to become a balance of, yeah, I know this. You don't need to fill my head with a bunch of stuff about it. And I'll work it and make it work for me because I need flex to be able to do this. And if you can't make it work, then you don't work that platform anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's the big thing right there. It's like, if you own a restaurant and somebody walks in and offers you $2 for the prime rib, you're going to say no.
Right.
Unless you're like really desperate. And if you're that desperate, you're going to go out of business. But the only time that we really started hearing all this voice about, we need AB5 and forget these companies was really just when the rates went down that very, like there was just one too many times. And when I remember it just went down one more time. And as soon as it did, I think it's even gone down a time since, but as soon as it did, it was getting pretty ridiculous. And it needs to be looked at now that we're post-pandemic for sure by these companies. But I remember that's when people started being like, this is crap. And all new drivers were getting on social media and seeing it and going, I'm thinking the same thing. First of all, if you've only been driving under 6 months or a year, shouldn't have an opinion because all jobs take a while to really understand, or all gigs or whatever, But again, are you making it work? Can you give up things in your life to be able to work the hours you need to make the money you're trying to make? But then again, it's your flexible time. You get to pick when it is. Any change to this, and people can say what they want, guys. Again, I'm going to say it. Flex is gone under an employee model. It's gone. Yeah, it is. So you talked about how, prices were going down and everything like that. And I know your experience has been on the rideshare side of things. And it seems like this race to zero. And it seems like it's going that way with delivery too, that everybody's kind of following suit. It was paying really good for a while and it just kind of slowly goes down and down and down. Do you see, let me know your thoughts, because I'm going somewhere with this, but let me know your thoughts on where Uber and Lyft are right now with their struggles trying to get drivers right now. Do you see that as part of kind of a natural result of what they've been doing, or is it strictly pandemic related?
I think that it's both. And I think that it's pandemic related even in two ways. It's pandemic related that people got very feared off by it. It gave them time to evaluate. I do think that there is way, way, way more people on PUA than people realize still. And I think that when that ends September 6th, I think we're going to see a huge influx back to the app-based gigs because schools will be starting, college football will be rolling out. It's kind of like that, new year feeling almost. Yeah. And it's going to be like, and a lot of people are feeling very safe to go do things these days. So I think that you're going to see people just waiting out because you can't get the PUA and work.
Right.
If you start saying that you're working, you can, but they'll start taking it out against part of it, whatever the formula is. And then if you do it too many weeks, they would call you an employee or that you're working and you need to get back to it. So nonetheless, you can't be doing both, so people, I think that, I've talked to a few people who are just like, yeah, I'm sure it'll make a difference, but not that many people are left. And I'm like, I think you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that once that money stops flowing into them, obviously reality sets in. How do you pay for stuff?
Yeah, that's true. I kind of wondered how much, the Uber and Lyft has just been begging for drivers. And I wonder how much of that is just that they've kind of created this relationship, or they've done with the relationship what they have, to a point where they've burned so many bridges that they can't get enough drivers to come back now.
So my take on this is maybe a little bit different than most. So,
Okay.
How they did that? What was it? The $250 million campaign to bring drivers back.
Right.
And the way they spent that, to me, was like, it's like everything with Uber. And I mean, I don't have a 60-person think tank team to go through this with, and they do. So I'm always surprised when I'm like, that seems dumb. But I feel like the way that they rolled that out was really dumb. I do.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that there was a lot better use of that money than just like increasing, like people's referral rates and stuff and having some crazy number on it still, when they were really doing it. Rideshare passengers are back in full, drivers are not. But this was at a point when even the rideshare passengers weren't back fully. And they were doing this referral system. So if you referred somebody, they were really making it they were saying 140 rides in a month. That would take like 80 hours a week. Not normally, not pre-pandemic, but at that time when they were doing it, it wasn't like there was rides everywhere.
Right.
At that time, there wasn't riders or drivers too many. So, I mean, it's just, you weren't going to be able to hit that number most of the time. I do know we talked about when you were on the podcast, and we had Jason from Idaho, Jason from Michigan, and David and all of us, the one I call the Ocean's 11 episode. I do know that they were also, if you remember, Jason Peason from Drive to Win 13 in Idaho was telling us that they were re-onboarding drivers who hadn't been kicked off the platform, but hadn't worked for even like a year or 2 or 3 years prior to the pandemic. They were now offering them the incentive of do 140 rides, get $1,800 to come back.
Yeah. Just crazy.
So you were getting you were getting these big things that you're not supposed to get except for one time.
Right.
So they were even like hitting up drivers that hadn't drove in 3 years and saying, hey, because nobody closes their Uber accounts. So like, let's say you do it for 2 years, then you take a full-time position, 60 hours a week as a salary position.
And that account is still just,
it's most likely you're not going to call them and say, I want to close it. I mean, if you're sure and stuff, sure. But you want to think about it, because if you close it, it might be very hard to reopen. I don't know. But you're better off just kind of leaving it. They already have your data, so it's not like they're stealing more data from you. They've already stolen it. They've already got that in the pocket, but there's no reason to really discontinue, because you don't know what's coming up down the road ahead. You might need some extra scratch, or you might get canned. Who knows?
Yeah, no, I get that. And kind of the reason that I wondered about that, or was where I was going with that, is there's a piece where you wonder, how much does the market actually start to police some of the actions of these companies? That it's like, once you go too far with how you treat your contractors, now all of a sudden you can't get enough contractors. And I wonder when the time will come when, Doordash and Grubhub come to mind the most, with just kind of like deactivating people at the drop of a hat, or, the stuff that DoorDash pulls with hiding the tips, with some of the crap that they've been pulling with Para, and just different things like that, that eventually, does that thing come back to bite them in the butt, where all of a sudden now they've moved on to more drivers, but all of a sudden you get to a point where there's not enough new drivers to bring on to match with all the bridges that they've burned. And do they, does the market take care of itself on a lot of these things more than trying to force changes through legislation?
Right. I don't know. That's rough question, because I mean, like, what do we have? 1.6 million Dashers in this country.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's, to me, and again, I'm not really breaking it down to the state and all the cities and taking in the size of every city in every state right now, but it just seems like too many. I don't know why, it just does. And that's been the model of these companies, so I'm sure it is to have way too many people working it.
I think
there needs to be some way to like, not necessarily limit, but it maybe at least like cap bringing people, onboarding people at certain times when a market hits a certain level and is maintaining it, even if it's different drivers. If they're like, let's say that like on Tuesday night, you need a par of 100 drivers on, and that par on Tuesday night every week is 100 people. And on all your other nights, it's pretty close to meeting the par of need. They shouldn't be onboarding too many more. Yes, some people will quit and whatnot, but as soon as they do, you start onboarding again. And then within days, you've got thousands more.
Yeah.
Especially because now people would be waiting to be onboarded. So you'd actually have a waiting list of people who you could, say, okay, 4 people quit, let's onboard 10.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. And because I think
to onboard everybody is just rude and taking advantage of the situation in my mind.
Oh, I believe I agree completely.
And
I think that's part of what makes this a little bit of a complicated topic, because there's the side that is just like, okay, we absolutely do not want to be employees. At least I know you and I don't.
No.
And I, like I said, 85% of people don't. I think out of those 85%, half of them still think that they are, but that's a whole.
Well, and also, there's a few stats out there that range from 88% to 91% that are part-time drivers.
Yeah.
So let's say 91. If 91% are part-time, I'm guessing they absolutely need the flex, because my guess is they have another job.
I think
or other gigs or whatever, independent contractor stuff or whatever.
Right.
Like
I was listening to the interview on another podcast with the was it the president of operations or something from DoorDash, and I think he was saying on that it was 90%. And he mentioned, I think at the time, about 2 million drivers, and like 90% of them were 8 hours or less a week.
Right.
And that tells you.
But one thing too, I really, really don't, when I'm talking about getting stats, and maybe I do it wrong, but I try and get it from like sources and people that I email with who are reporters and might know, outside of just posting and social and whatnot. But I try and stay away from what these CEOs say.
Sure. No, I mean, I agree.
Dude, they could be cooking these book numbers they read so bad.
Yeah.
I mean, he can come out and say anything. He can come out and say 2%.
That's true.
You don't get access to DoorDash's books, you won't be able to fact check it.
Yeah. But I think, and there's definitely a trust issue when it comes to DoorDash.
Oh, yeah. All of them. Let's be honest.
I
think
that's part of the problem, is that there's so much bad behavior on the part of the gig companies that people are trying to figure out, how do you police that? Let me ask this question. Do you think that Uber and DoorDash and all these other companies are exploiting the independent contractor model in any way?
Yeah, I do. And I think that, however, again, I'm going to go back to what you just said, that you and I and 85% of the people doing this want to stay independent contractors. And that I do. That's my first and foremost must happen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So before I say this, but yes, I do. I think that especially, I think there's some severe ethical problems for sure on the part of AB5 was incorrect, which turned into AB2257. They're one and the same, but it was so sloppy written and whatnot. But it was not right, and it hurt a ton of people. They developed Prop22 not to save a lot of the people who also needed it, but just to save the app-based community, gig workers. And people had to vote for Prop22 who probably would have, based on the companies behind it, Uber, Lyft, Instacart, and DoorDash, who put in $200 million to push Prop22, it was necessary for those 85% who want to stay to vote yes on it, regardless of how you felt. But it's weird to look at that proposition and see those four, huge corporations that have treated people so poorly are the ones backing the initiative you have to vote for to override a law that was incorrect.
Yeah.
So here's the problem though. Now that it happened and it passed, I think that they're kind of starting to step outside of the margins of Prop 22, which, everybody had to vote for Prop 22 in California who wants to be IC, and they did. And then there's this whole Prop 22 written out of what it is. And I find a lot of errors in it. Like, I think that there's a lot of stuff that you could argue they're not doing.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. Here's the irony in Prop 22. Prop 22, by definition, actually puts them in violation of the IRS test because of the hourly pay. That's the financial control. When you got that hourly minimum, that actually provides financial control. It gives them a little more control because they can control whether or not you multi-app, things like that. So that's the part that I find fascinating. Nobody's touched on that yet, but someday that may come up. I don't know.
Here's how I see that, because I've heard the multi-apping thing a bunch, and I actually see it like this. I don't think maybe there's been some incidents, but I don't think they're really cracking down on it. But they've got it in the language, again, how you and I were talking about how when newbies come on, they see the acceptance rate. Acceptance rate doesn't matter anymore in California. And the model that they're moving around the country to fight the ProAct and to fight Massachusetts right now, legislation is, it doesn't matter. And many of you dashers out there, I'm sure will know that, you have 2 to 5% acceptance rates. I've seen you guys post them, so I know it's true. But they don't matter. I think that Ron and I were talking, we both kind of think that they're more like put there for the newbies to kind of scare them almost for a while until they get the hang of things.
Yep. And that's part of their MO, really. I see it in the behavior of these companies that it really is about, they can't legally control you, but they control a lot of drivers through fear. And, and I think that's what the whole deactivation thing is about. It's about, it's kind of like deactivate enough people to scare the rest of the drivers into submission.
Well, and also the other thing I was trying to get at with that was that, yes, maybe they've deactivated a few, and I don't even know that. I've seen a few people say it and whatnot. I don't know about it, but nonetheless, I think that it's a nice tool for them to have in their pocket. Who knows that if things get more sloppy and messy, they might start using it. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're not exactly the greatest wizards of technology people, but like the app-based companies still might be working on things to find ways to find out if you are multi-apping.
Sure.
Right now, I'll just tell you, they don't have that ability. Right. You'd have to almost catch yourself. You'd have to have one app on, and you'd have to be driving the wrong way and accept an order. There was some other, something dumb. You'd have to do something dumb that would flag you.
Yeah. Now here in California, here in Colorado, they can't prevent you from multi-apping. And in California, they can't, as far as if you're, you do one platform, as soon as you're done, then you turn the others on, and they can't prevent that. The only thing that they can prevent is like picking up deliveries for Uber and Doordash at the same time. But even then, how do they know? Unless you're dumb enough to take a delivery from Doordash that goes way north, and at the same time as you take one from Uber Eats, it's going way south.
Right.
That kind of becomes a little more obvious then.
Right.
But
and maybe some people who get really good at it actually know, well, this I'm only going a half mile out of my way, and then I only have to go 3/4 of a mile to drop my first one off. Then I can take the second, and that wouldn't be enough to flag it. And maybe some people have learned little tricks like that. I don't know. Yeah. But nonetheless, like that is the way probably in my mind that they would catch you is the second platform where you accept one saying, where's this guy going?
Yep. I think there's a reality out there that ultimately, if people really understood what it was being an independent contractor, and if the relationship really were a business to business relationship, across the board, DoorDash and Uber Eats and Grubhub and any of these companies wouldn't have enough contractors to complete the deliveries. Because if they were making sure that people really understood what they were getting into, they wouldn't have enough people. And I think that's the area where I feel like there's some and maybe you would even call it misclassification, but I think that that's an area where there's a problem with the independent contractor model, because the problem is that these companies want you to be an employee, but they want to pay you as an independent contractor.
Right.
And I think there's a problem. And I think that's why I think that has a lot to do with why we're in this situation now with ProAct, because then you get people fed up, and what they want to do is they want to go to the opposite extreme and just force them to hire employees. And I'm not sure that's the best idea. We'll get to that in a second. But I honestly am still kind of sticker shocked by how many people I start talking about ProAct with, and they're like, "What is that?" Yeah, and they're like full-time gig employees on like 6 platforms. I'm like, "What do you? How do you not know? You don't need to know what Ron and I know, but how do you not know about this? Yeah, this is your future ending." It is, and there is something that I think very real about that. Most likely it's not going to go through. We just saw the infrastructure bill go through. Right. On what was it, Tuesday? Yes. Okay. So on Tuesday it went through, and then Tuesday night they pushed the 3.2 trillion package. And from what Ron and I could find, it was just really the only parts of things to do with ProAct were regarding rails, because it had something about Amtrak in there, but it really didn't address the ABC test or any kind of change of that nature that we found anyway. Right. Yeah, because ProAct as a bill by itself is stuck right now. It's essentially, they're going to need to get, as things stand right now, 60 votes to be able to push that thing through. There are, but look at, they shoved it in, or they were trying to shove it exactly worded as it was into infrastructure. Yeah. Which was just incorrect. Yeah. And that's, and that's maybe one of the things. So, right now, as far as that act by itself is not likely to happen, but just like what you said, the infrastructure thing, the government has a way of trying to hide these things in something. If it's not going to pass by itself, we're going to try and hide. We're going to try and hide it in some other bill. And when they passed the stimulus bill at the end of December of last year, they snuck in a little piece that changed the 1099K ruling, which for Uber Eats, Lyft drivers, that changes when you have to report your taxes from $20,000 to $600. And so if you've been delivering for them and you're used to not having to report your taxes because you're not getting a 1099, get ready for a change this year. And that's not a small number of the drivers. What was the other one that you were talking about that they pushed through as part of the infrastructure? The gas. Okay. Where I'm not sure where it is. Mm-hmm. And I'm not even, again, it's not like it's an easy read, guys. And right now they tried to shove so much stuff in infrastructure that didn't belong, that has been weeded through. So it's kind of waiting. We're kind of waiting on a final draft that we can really read. There's a lot of stuff out there you can read and try and get ideas from where it was to where it is. But, we're never 100% sure of what's going on over there, because they're also trying to kick it through reconciliation. But so they're just trying a lot of maneuvers, and hopefully, we'll get that shut down. We have 3 standouts, Democrats in the Senate. I just want to mention them while I'm thinking of it. The Democrat from Arizona, actually 2 from Arizona and 1 from Virginia, Kristen Sinema, Mark Kelly, and Mark Warner from Virginia. And Mark Warner is kind of a key to this. If he stays firm on this, I honestly think we won't see the ProAct go through at all. No, I don't think there will. And for I don't think it will anyway. But as long as he stands strong, I think it's like solidified. Right. Kind of just to explain to anybody that didn't quite understand how this works with getting the votes through, ProAct has passed the House of Representatives, but it has not passed in the Senate. In the Senate, they have to get 50 votes. The Democrats are the one pushing it through. Right now, they've only got 47 votes. To pass something, you have to get 50 votes. But if there's enough opposition from the other side where they're going to do what's called a filibuster, then they have to get 60 votes. And so those are 2 different things. And we could spend a lot of time talking about how all that works.
Right.
But there's two different things there, that basically say it is probably not going to pass as it is.
So the ProAct has passed the House for 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
It passed in 2019, last year, 2020, and this year, 2021. And as the ProAct, now, before it went to the Senate this week, they were trying all these things to shove it into infrastructure. And luckily it ended up that they didn't shove that portion in. Right. The ABC test and any of that. So that it still leaves it at bay how it's being handled. And it could be extra dirty and deceiving how it's being done. I don't know, but at least it won't be shoved through in the infrastructure bill at this point.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think those are the two things that we probably have to keep an eye on, is that there's really two ways that it could pass. One is that you can change the rules, which basically mean you don't have to have the 60 votes, but then they still have to get those 3 senators to go on board. Right. So, but they can change the rules. When we talk about reconciliation, that was actually like a rule change that happened a few years ago that allowed budget bills to go through with only 50 votes. The other thing is they can hide it, like we were talking about. They were going to try and hide it in the infrastructure. That got blocked. They could hide it in something else. So there's always that possibility that it can still get pushed through. It doesn't look like it's going to pass, but that's a high priority for a lot of people, that they want to get this thing pushed through.
It is. And even we sit in a weird position because even Joe Biden ran to be saying he was going to help push this through. Yet last year we saw the government make so many contracts with Uber and Lyft. So I mean, like, how is he straddling that horse? I mean, you can't say you're going to do everything for the people who want to be employees, but you're working with the company as it stands right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's not even that's an endorsement.
Right. No, I get that. Kind of one last thing I want to touch on, because, it at least right now doesn't look like it will go through. You don't want to rest too easy. And I think with the senators that you just mentioned, if you're in a state with those senators, man, get in touch with them and say, hey, stay the course. Don't go changing your mind now or something like that.
Email them.
Anything.
You can find the emails on the government site. So
is there a better way to do things? Because we know there's a problem here. There's a problem with the misbehavior by the gig companies.
Mm-hmm.
But if forcing them to hire employees isn't the way to go, is there a better way to take care of this? Is there a better way to do something about the way that these companies are acting? Do you think?
I mean, we can watch how the worker class plays out in London and Europe.
Okay.
Because the Supreme Court ruling that, here in America, we have, when you're talking about in this form, we have independent contractors and employees. Those are the two things.
And there's
Supreme
no way
Court,
between.
Right. And the Supreme Court over across the pond ruled finally that their arguments have been going on a little longer than ours too. So oddly, you can kind of watch them as a little bit in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
In regards to how they're treating the gig economy. They got on it a little bit quicker than the US. So they're a little bit ahead. So it's kind of nice to watch how it plays out, because they just finished making their worker class status.
And so what is that worker class status?
Gig workers, app-based on-demand gig workers for the platforms that we've been talking about today. Over there, they've got other ones like Deliveroo and the one that you were talking about, Just Eat or whatever.
Oh yeah, the guys that
all those. I mean, like, there's a lot of other things too, but they have Uber and stuff. They don't have Lyft, but they've got their own versions of all these. And if you're working those platforms, you are now in the worker class,
which is not fully employee, but it has some protections that independent contractor doesn't have. Is that right?
Right. And you are guaranteed an hourly minimum wage.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, like, you're guaranteed to make X amount if you stay on for the hour. Like, so if you only make, I don't know, I'm just gonna use arbitrary numbers. If it's $20 or $15 that they're guaranteeing you'll make, and you only make 9, you're going to still get 15.
Yeah.
So it's a weird system. And I don't know that I think it'll be, I don't think in London, they're not really able to challenge. They can, but I mean, try and challenge a Supreme Court ruling over there. It doesn't happen. You don't overturn it. So this is now fact. I think that now it's watching it evolve. How will it change?
Yeah, because you had a guy on your podcast that was from over there at one time, didn't you?
Yeah, Morad a few times. Yeah.
Okay.
He's my ears on the ground. He's a blogger over there. It's Driver App London. He's a good guy, and he kind of writes about some stuff going on from the street, from the driver perspective. And he's got a lot of London people who comment. So, I had reached out to him, and we kind of had a conversation a bunch of times before I had him on. But yeah, he's shed light on it a few times. I think it's our episode 51 of Rideshare Rodeo is the one where he fully breaks down the worker class right after it got done.
Yeah. So, guys, head over to the Rideshare Rodeo podcast and give that one a listen, because I think that's at least something. If you're thinking about, is there an in between? Maybe that is an option. The only other thing I can think of is there, why isn't there any kind of effort out there to police the control oversteps that are taking place out there? It's kind of like, if you can't control the independent contractor, I don't think that means that you have to force us to be employees. Can you still police those oversteps and things like that?
It's really weird that everything would go away for all the headaches and lawsuits that Lyft and Uber and all these companies spend every day. They're wasting so much money, not just on having attorneys on retainer, but active attorneys fighting cases all over the world. And right here in the US, if they literally just went to a split, 80-20, 75-25, every headache would go away immediately for them. And then they could adjust their pricing model to reflect, we need to make our nut based on the 25%. Mm-hmm. And then therefore us drivers know, hey, they're going to make us as much money as they can. We don't need to see surge and all this anymore. We would just know, we're going to make as much as we can because they need to make their money. And it's only 25%.
Yeah. And that becomes, I think, even more of a true contractor model, because
exactly
what you're getting now is based on what they're getting. And it's really almost like a direct payment from the customer then.
And it actually goes back to the initial campaign of Uber, be a driving partner.
Yep.
That way, I don't have to look at rides and go, I don't want that one. Or, I'll just take everything you send me because I know you're working your butt off to make as much money on every ride as you can. Because if you're taking 25%, they got to make sure they're making their numbers, which will change the rates, which have been needing to change. They don't need to be 200% like they are now, but they need to come up.
Here's an interesting thing. You mentioned that, be a driving partner. And this is just a little tidbit that maybe isn't related at all, but I was talking with somebody from Uber or about Uber Eats about kind of like an advertising relationship, something like that. One of the things that they told me was that the content on my website, if I'm doing that, I can't mention Uber as a partner. They don't even want to use the word partner anymore.
No, they've completely, it's, I've actually seen it in the website on a couple spots. And I almost think, with the way I know these companies, I always thought, there's no way they miss stuff, but they actually do. I think they've removed a couple things, but They really have tried to unbrand the partner thing.
Yeah. And to the point that if you're doing kind of like this advertising affiliate relationship with them, they won't even, they won't do that partnership if you're calling them, or they won't do the partnership with you as a publisher if you're calling the relationship of drivers with them a partnership.
Right. Well, and it's changed a few times. I remember that for years when they were first getting away from the partnership, it was their big thing was earn on your time. When it changed from be a Uber partner,
mm-hmm.
It changed to earn on your time. And I think it's changed again now, but for years it was earn on your time.
Yeah. And I think
that was their way of unbranding
they get themselves into, though, is that lack of consistency. Exactly. That it's like, ultimately, we don't matter. And they're my customer, so I don't care.
Right.
I don't take that personally, but it is an attitude that ultimately, I think that's part of what's getting them in trouble. And so
one thing I think for sure is they need to look at, their pricing model right now. They were, before the pandemic and whatnot, they were in a race to the bottom. Never would Uber go 1 penny above a Lyft price. You know what I mean? Or whenever possible. Obviously, in real time, it's hard to do that. But I mean, they would try to always stay right there. And it was a race to the bottom a little bit. Who can undercut as far as what? And then now we're seeing 200, 250% rates that passengers are paying. That's the first time they've ever done that. So they didn't even do like 120% like it should have been. The initial move up. They just said pandemic, boom. And I feel like part of that so that they can lower it back down, but not get it back to where it was.
Right.
And because if you do 250% to people that are, let's say that like you fly out twice a month to a city and you know that an Uber ride is $40 to your house. If right now it's 100 and you're like, what the heck? And they roll it back to 60, you'll be like, sweet. But really it's not. They just raised it $20 on you.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing where I heard that Trump used to do as part of his negotiations was, he would ask for something so outrageous that people would get, just all up in arms. So then he'd come back with something else and it's like, okay, that's better. And what he's done is he's actually gotten away with more than what he was asking for to begin with. And it sounds like kind of what Uber's doing. Are drivers on the rideshare side, because the rates are getting so outrageous out there, are drivers getting that money at all?
So it's odd you say that. All the people I talk to, no. What I've heard from people is you might make more per hour because you have never ending rides, which is something we stopped seeing even way before the pandemic.
Right.
You often were sitting idle. And if the wheels aren't moving, you're not making money. So I mean, a lot of times you were sitting idle. Those days, I think right now anyway, in almost every market are gone. If you turn on, you will have rides the whole day. So therefore, you're probably making more per hour, but you're also spending more on gas.
But you're not getting more for the road.
Right. I mean, really, you're not being paid
relationship.
More. However, I just had like a really intense email written to me by a New Jersey driver who listened to the podcast this week where I was talking about that and said, she actually sent me all her stats, and I'm looking at having her on the podcast because she's like, I don't know that I agree with that. I actually am making more money.
Oh, that's interesting.
And she sent me a bunch of actually, it was crazy. She's sending me like all these full breakdowns of her numbers. It was a really well articulated email. It was about 3 pages. So I contacted her. So would you want to come on the podcast? Because I'd like to talk about this.
That is interesting. And the reason I wondered that a little bit was I can remember a snowstorm one time and I looked up and I was just like, I wonder what's going on with Uber Eats right now or something. And I pulled them up and they were doing like $20 delivery fees. And it's like, oh, dude, I should be out there delivering right now. And I pull up the app. There was no extra. There was no surge. There was nothing extra. They were not paying any extra, but they're charging the customer a whole lot more money. And what that actually ends up doing is, I think, what I think it was probably doing was probably costing drivers money, because what happens is the customer, they see that $20 fee and they just figure, okay, the driver must be making a lot more money for doing that. And so I don't need to do a tip on top of it. So the driver still gets the same money and they get less in tips. And
exactly. So, and also when you mention what I'm guessing anyway, when you mention a snow day, we see snow here on the Front Range sometimes here and there. But when what I think Ron's talking about with the snow day is really dangerous roads, extreme. Right. A lot of people who have snow wherever you live, you might not see what he's talking about. Like these are the days that it is truly dangerous to be out there.
Yeah, exactly. That type of a day. And so, again, it's kind of like it's that inconsistency and that's all the stuff I guess we're trying to solve today is it's like, okay, they don't treat us like independent contractors all the time, but we don't want to be employees and there's got to be a way in between. And one of these days we'll get that problem solved.
Yeah. I mean, bottom line, people, is really think through, I guess I would do a pro cons list of why you want to be an employee of this company. I think you might be very sticker shocked on that one too, to see, wow, my cons list is really long.
Yeah. If you're honest with yourself.
If you're being very honest and you're sitting alone and you're just doing this, you might find like, okay, I'm going to do this to prove him wrong. You might find that your pro list is only 1 or 2 things. And that if you're really being honest and adding in, I'll lose my flex. I will be an employee. I'll have to work when they say I'll have to take every ride. I will be paid a floor payment and that will also be my ceiling payment.
Yep.
Just everything. If you're really being honest and you put this down, it's not going to look as good on paper.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you wonder, at what point does the tips go away?
Right. Well,
Because,
why wouldn't they take it off? Because these companies, if they have to pay you as an employee, they'll just kind of be like, well, if they want to tip you, they'll do it cash because we want to make it look like they don't have to spend any more than this.
Exactly. And that's what happened in California with Prop22, when especially Grubhub was the worst one at this, that all of a sudden now they have to pay this minimum amount, and they quit suggesting a tip based on a percentage. A lot of times it was either like $1, $2, or $3, $50 order, and they're suggesting $1 for the tip, or they're not suggesting anything for the tip. And they even put a note in there that says, basically, the point where the driver's making enough now because of this program that you don't need to tip. And the whole reason for that was Grubhub put on a surcharge to cover their extra cost, but they didn't want the total amount to look like customers have to pay more. So essentially what they did was they took it away from the drivers. And that's the part that I think you want to be really careful about. If you push them into an employee model, that's the thing you got to be careful about, is they're going to pull that kind of crap.
Right.
So, Steve, thank you so much for all of your time here. I have kept you on probably longer than I think you planned on being on here, and I appreciate that. And I did that to you yesterday when we got together.
We did it to each other. Yeah, Ron and I hadn't ever met in person, and we were able to go out and have a coffee yesterday. And I think both of us were thinking an hour, but it's just turned into an organic conversation that
we shut
really
down
good.
The bar.
We shut down the coffee bar.
Down the coffee house. So,
all right, man.
Thanks for coming on, and I'll have to have you back on here. And especially as we see things evolve here with all this, if nothing else, it's just going to be an interesting ride.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I think right now we're in the clear, by the way, for the ProAct. I think that it would have to be on its own merit, and I don't think that can happen. So that, in a nutshell, would be
I agree.
Where I think it stands. And by the way, while we were just talking literally a half a minute ago, I didn't see it, but an email banner came through saying the FDA just approved the vaccine.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Again, weird timing just before school, and there's a lot of breakthrough cases. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if we know a common gig caster that might have got sick and been vaccinated only for 2 months or a few months or whatever. So, Yeah, kind of weird. It's just weird stuff going on. Weird times, man.
It is. It tells you all about that, the ancient curse. May you live in interesting times.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, my friends, these are interesting times. And I thank you, all of you, for hanging out with us and everything like that. And thank you, Steve, for hanging out with the crew.
All right. So hopefully, if you missed that when Ron played it on EntreCourier, you've heard it now. When we first recorded it, Ron had said, hey, you can put this on your channel too. And I told him, hey, let's you put it out and we'll put it out later, like in a month or so, or, because I like giving things the full time when we do share type things with other YouTube creators or podcasters or whatnot. There needs to be some lapse in that time. But yeah, so I thought this was a very important piece. It's out there now. And it's stamped 17 days before you will hear the Veena Dubal and myself piece on worker status, which will be independent contractor / employee. And we're going to try and stick in that topic. I don't know where it will go because I hope it is organic as all of the podcasts that I do. And we might track off a little bit, but I'm very interested to have a specific conversation with her, at least as a base core that all of you can relate to. So everybody needs to tune in to that one, and in fact, just tune into all of them. But that'll be an interesting one because we don't often get to hear Veena's point of view, other than just in tweets and whatnot. And sometimes that's, I know that I can't barely ever get all my points across in a tweet. So anyway, that's it for this week's bonus episode. I want to thank my sponsor, Curry. we're really leaps and bounds with them right now. They're doing a lot for UberLiftDrivers.com, RideshareRodeo.com. I'm doing a lot for them, Curry.com, and it's just a great combination, us and them. So I'm really happy that this is continuing, and hopefully we will keep it continuing. It's a good relationship, and I think they're a great fit for the podcast. So that said, the sign up for Curry is in the links. I suggest you get signed up quickly, because I have advised, for whatever it's worth, them to start doing an onboarding process like Grubhub's, at least for cars and SUVs and things of that nature. Trucks, pickups, flatbeds, all that kind of stuff. If you onboard, you're going to have tons of work right out of the gate. If you get a route with Curry, that's daily money, and it's good, or it's great. And but the routes, I'm trying to make it so, because I think when a city gets flooded, often us gig workers get if we hear about something like Curry, we download it, and if we see a few deliveries available and we're trying to grab them and we can't, or we're just, we're not getting any or whatever while the area is growing, I think that's a bad time to have too many drivers on, because in my experience, gig workers are very likely to bail. And even though they could keep the app, most of us keep our phones pretty full with apps and how many things are running at once. So gig workers are very aware of what's on your phone. So if you're not getting anything out of an app, you're very likely to delete it. So my suggestion has been to Curry to not onboard too many people in an area, figure out some kind of per capita based on, the contractors and relationships they have and the volume that they're doing in a city to how many people they onboard, so that there's enough to go around, but never a lack of drivers to pick up the rides. So the hotshot rides here in Denver, they're hard to grab, but they come through all the time, and the pay is great. And the guy I rode with today, Nathan, he told me about how before he was doing this route, he was doing hotshot rides all the time, dating back probably a ways. I don't know if it was a whole year or what, but he's been doing this for a while. And I was telling him Denver's a tougher market now to get a ride in, more people doing it. And he's we were talking, he said, that's funny, because when they first came here, I was getting them all. So my advice is, if you have a truck, a pickup, anything larger than that, sign up at your will, because sign up when you're ready to make money, because you will, and you'll get it right away. If you don't, sign up right now, because whatever market you're in, because those are the type of rides that I was saying, where if you get even one a week, or one, let's say you get one in a day, or you work Monday through Friday doing rideshare or food delivery, or you get 3 in a week on 3 of those days, or 2 on one day, whatever, that Curry money offsets what you make on all of the other platforms by many-fold. The payment with Curry is way higher than it is with other apps. So in the show notes, sign up, and that's it, guys. We will see you back here next Tuesday, and I'm going to try and put together a last bonus episode for next Friday. I have an idea in mind. I hope I can get all the material I need to do it. If not, it might have to come out the week after, if I have to wait till after next Friday when I drive. So it might be like a last final bonus episode that comes out over the weekend next weekend. Maybe that's what'll happen, so I can get that in. But this was the earmarked final bonus episode. So thank you all for tuning in. That's been great. We will be back to, we didn't leave it, but we'll be doing still, as always, our normal weekly drop that comes out on Tuesdays. And for now, I'm going to say, yes, I'm probably going to do something that will drop on Saturday, so I can get all my Friday stuff in to the piece that'll have Mr. Flex doing his YouTube thing, and me doing the Curry route myself, and I kind of blend those two into one final bonus episode, go out on the weekend. After that, we're just back to Tuesdays and the weekly drop. But you can find us every Friday night on tncradio.live, and that is from 4 to 6 Pacific, 5 to 7 Mountain, 6 to 8 Central, and 9 to 11 Eastern. I think I just got that right. I don't know. I feel like it's 8 to 10 Eastern, but anyway, 4, 5, 6, 7 to 9. I don't know. Anyway, do the math. I know it's 5 to 7 Mountain. So from there, do the math. I've had a long day. That said, go get out there, have a weekend, enjoy some weather if you still got some. Go enjoy some of the fall colors if you if you live in a place that gets them, go out and enjoy some of that, and spin some positive into this world. Okay, we'll see you back here next week on Rodeo. Peace.